All right, folks, from the muddy banks of the North Saskatchewan River right here in scenic Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, this is Jack Antonio, your host of Do You Know Jack, the podcast. And on the line with me today is aspiring young rocker Abby Kay. Abby, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm awesome. And, I've been looking forward to chatting with you now for a few weeks. So it's great to, finally meet you and have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So now, familiarize me with the story, Abby. Because you're fairly young, and it's maybe not the stereotypical thing for someone of your age and ilk to be interested in rock and roll these days. And I speak from experience because I have kids that are a little bit younger than me that they want to listen to Taylor Swift and Imagine Dragons. So how did this fascination with rock and roll start out, Abby?
So actually, my first memory of music was from when I was around 5 years old. I would ask my dad for Taylor Swift or Justin Bieber, and he would give it to me on my iPod in exchange for Kiss, Metallica, and Iron Maiden. And I really started to love rock music, so he took me to see Kiss when I was 12. And that was the night that changed my life. I remember sitting at the back of the lawn on top of my dad's shoulders with the Paul Stanley makeup on my face, and I was completely mesmerized by Gene Simmons. I just knew I have to do that someday.
What? So you were a Paul Stanley fan initially, but you ended up on the bass. I mean, what was it about Gene's performance that night that sort of inspired you?
So Gene Simmons is just so confident on bass, and he's really sure of what he's doing. He's a true rock star performer, and I was just taken in by that, and it was such an overwhelming experience. All of a sudden, it just hit me that, oh my gosh, I have to do this.
Yeah. Well, now I was thinking too, though. I mean, in terms of your own bass playing style, I've seen your YouTube channel, and there's a wide variety of covers, and including, I think there's one there of the Trooper that you really nail. So I mean, from a musical standpoint, Abby, like, would you say that you're maybe more inspired by bass players like Steve Harris or Geddy Lee of Rush? I think I saw a cover of YYZ on there as well.
Yes, absolutely. I love Steve Harris, and I love Geddy Lee. I also really like listening to stuff by Motorhead. I love Lemmy, and Geezer Butler as well. Those are my favorite bassists.
So tell me this now, just, speaking of a few of these bands that you mentioned, I mean, in terms of Kiss, for instance, I mean, what's your go-to Kiss jam?
So actually, the first song I ever sang in my first band was Detroit Rock City by Kiss. It was, I believe, at the Kiss concert, that's the song that, Gene Simmons really stood out to me in. I believe that's where that happened. And I've always loved that song, so I always go to Detroit Rock City.
Right. Well, and now is the Trooper sort of your go-to Iron Maiden track?
Absolutely. So actually, I got the chance to audition for America's Got Talent. The casting agent asked me, and I had to pick a song, so I actually picked The Trooper by Iron Maiden for that as well.
Awesome. So I mean, what was the result of that audition, or are you at liberty to say at this point?
It wasn't for me. I got a call back from the first to second audition, but I wasn't who they were looking for this season. And I was really okay with that because I had some pretty amazing opportunities come from that.
Well, now I think you mentioned Black Sabbath too. I mean, just as a bass player, like where you at in terms of songs there, Abby? What's your favorite there?
So in my live show, I actually play NIB. And my favorite part of that is the bass solo before the song happens. I find that that's a really good way to show off my skills. I also put in the bass solo, it's in the same key as Hang Tough by Tesla, so I also put that riff in there as well.
Nice. Yeah, well, now I was thinking, just as you were talking, I mean, here you are, you're a young aspiring rocker. You're probably I think the press release says you're about 13 years old. You see your Kiss concert, and then, I mean, what happened from there? Like you just said, hey, Dad, can you get me a bass? Like, how did that work?
So the day after the Kiss concert, I started playing acoustic guitar because it's all we owned.
Yeah.
But eventually I found my way to an electric guitar, and then I was never really satisfied until I found my way to a bass. Once I picked up a bass, everything just felt right. I just knew what to do. I knew how to play a bass. It just was exactly what I needed to be doing.
There's probably a certain feeling of power too, in terms of the, just banging out those low notes that maybe, playing guitar, you wouldn't have that same feel. Am I right?
Yes. And I also knew that there were so many guitarists in my area, and I could only think of 2 or 3 bassists in the Charlotte area that I knew. Now, I was only 12 or 13, but still. Like, my dad always used to tell me for every 100 kids that get a guitar for Christmas, 1 gets a bass. So I was pretty proud that I was able to play bass. It was a pretty special thing to me.
Now I think you're from North Carolina, am I right?
Yes, I'm from Charlotte.
Right. Well, I was thinking now, just as a music teacher myself, I mean, did you have access to a band program? Did you think about going that route? Because I think, 13 years old is probably right around the time normally that you would start. I mean, how did your lessons work in your training and so on and so forth?
So for the first about 6 months, I was completely self-taught on guitar and bass. And I was doing pretty well with that. I would wake up very early in the morning before school to practice. I would practice until the very late hours of the night. And I made a lot of progress on my own, but I really wanted to be in a band. So there was a local music shop that put together bands, and so my dad took me there, and that's actually how I became a bassist. The band before me was in need of a bass player, and the guy asked me, "Have you ever played a bass?" And I said, "No, I am a guitarist." And he handed me a bass, and that's when everything felt right.
Right. Yeah. It makes sense. Well, and now, fast forward to right now, here you are, you're 16 and you're fronting a band, and of course, the track "It Should Have Been Me" has dropped, a very, very well polished song. I think, just listening to the lyrics, it sort of reminds me a little bit of Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne, but from an opposite perspective, where sort of you're the person that's, the success story, and you're kind of like, haha, look, maybe you should have stuck around instead of going with somebody else, right? Whereas, like, I think Skater Boy is sort of like, here's a guy that I got with who nobody took seriously, but now he's like massively famous,
Yeah, so "It Should Have Been Me" is actually a true story also.
I mean, so so in your actual songwriting, I mean, do you draw a lot on your own personal experiences?
"It Should Have Been Me" was the first song I wrote, and it was personal experience. I auditioned for a band, and they told me I was their best option, but they didn't pick me because I'm a female and I'm so young.
Right.
And I was hurt, and I got mad, and I went home, and I wrote "It Should Have Been Me." But then there's other songs that I've written since then that are nowhere near personal experiences, but they're things that other people can relate to.
Right. Yeah, I mean, given that you have this kind of classic rock upbringing, it was interesting that, maybe you're leaning a little bit more towards almost like a pop punk or pop metal type vibe.
Yeah, so I'm trying to put out hard rock songs with pop hooks, so they're relatable and appeal to a wide audience.
Yeah. And like this first song that you put out, I mean, I've been like singing it in my head all day, Abby. Thanks a lot.
That's the goal. That is the goal.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the key to writing a great song is, to have a very catchy hook. So, congratulations on that.
Yes, gotta get it stuck in people's heads.
So you've got this song out. You've got Eddie Z, aka Eddie Zimmerman, sort of, I guess, managing you, right? I mean, how did that relationship start?
So that also started with the America's Got Talent audition. He owns a local studio that's also a national studio.
Right.
And my dad reached out to him because I'm a singer and a bassist, and we didn't have any backing tracks that had no bass and no vocals. So we went to the studio, we recorded a backing track for The Trooper, and that's when Eddie started taking an interest in my music career.
Right, right. And I mean, he's a bit of an institution in your neck of the woods, am I right? Like, I mean, the studio you're talking about is a pretty large and well-known practice space that's been known to house quite a number of big name bands, if my information is correct.
Yes, yes. The Playroom has had 30 Grammy Award nominations and winners through here.
That's amazing. So I mean, what do you think Eddie saw in you in particular that made him want to kind of take the reins of your career, so to speak?
My work ethic. I want to have a career in the music industry so bad, and I am so willing to work for it. I will get up earlier. I used to get up at 4 a.m. before school. Now that I'm 16, that does get a little harder, but I still try to get up as early as possible, play my bass, practice music theory, practice my vocal warm-up, and I try to get better every single day. And I do believe that that's why he decided to sign me.
Yeah, I mean, drive and work ethic is such a big part of it for sure, and of course, having natural talent, and then on top of that, kind of just being in the right place at the right time, right? And it seems like so far in
Yeah.
your short career that you've managed to capture that lightning in a bottle and have all of those things.
Yes, yes. I'm very fortunate that I was able to work with him. I'm very glad for all of the opportunities I've gotten.
Right, right. Well, now speaking of opportunities, I mean, I know, the school year, I'm not sure when it would start in North Carolina. I mean, here in Saskatchewan, we're just still a few days away. But I mean, now that school is starting, I mean, how are you going to, what's your next step? How are you going to negotiate your way through that? Because I would imagine now with the notoriety that at least this first track is bringing, that there's probably some offers. And, I would imagine maybe there's an EP that might be coming down the pike as well.
So I'm very fortunate with my school situation. School's already started. It started about 3 weeks ago. I get to leave school early every day, and I take online college classes so I can come straight to the studio and work on my music, work on writing more music. And so from that, I've been able to write and record 3 new singles that we will be releasing eventually. So that will come before an EP or an album, but you can expect those very soon.
Yeah. Well, now what about actually getting out and performing these songs live? I mean, I would imagine in the hometown there's opportunities, but you've managed to rub shoulders with, people like Nita Strauss and even open for her, on a couple of solo shows. So, I mean, where are you at in terms of the actual performing aspect here, Abby?
Yes, so I did open for Nita Strauss twice. Those were incredible experiences. One was in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and the next one was in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I have a live show again in South Carolina on September 28th, and I have lots of new dates coming up this fall and winter, but stay tuned for those details.
Right on. Well, I mean, speaking of staying tuned, Abby, I mean, where's the best place to find out about your next steps in terms of your social media and whatnot? And I would imagine there's probably a website as well. Am I right?
Yes. My website is abbykonbass.com, and all of my social media is abbykonbass.
Excellent, excellent. Well, listen, Abby, it's been awesome chatting with you today about your music and your aspirations and goals. And it's really encouraging in this day and age where we're so bombarded with, and I mean, not that there's anything wrong with pop music and hip hop, mind you, but I think it's really cool that you're getting out there and you're picking up an instrument and you're getting out there with or trying to get out there with a hardworking band and playing shows and just learning your craft and being determined and driven to carry yourself as far as you possibly can in the industry. And I have no doubt that within the next 2 or 3 years in particular, with your hard work and motivation, that we'll be hearing a lot more from you.
Thank you so much for everything. Have a great night.
Yeah, you too, Abby. Thank you very much.